Karina and Craig Waters first purchased the sprawling Château de Gudains in Verdun, in the south of France. Little did they know the full extent to which their work was cut out for them. But now, nearly 5 years later, the couple from Perth in Western Australia find themselves in the midst of a lifelong commitment to restoring and renovating the Level 1 historical monument, which dates from the reign of King Louis XV and sits in Ariège, in the Occitanie region. After sharing the story of the chateau, which the couple originally purchased for an estimated $500,000 with female last year, Mrs. Waters now explains the myriad lessons she and her partner have learned throughout the process of turning their pipe dream into a reality. The couple recently released a book, sharing the story and photographs of Château de Gudains, from when foundations were first laid in the 13th century right up to the present day. They also discussed hosting their very first wedding at the chateau, and opening their restoration as a working hotel for visitors. Speaking to Daily Mail Australia, Mrs. Waters explained that work has been ongoing since they first purchased the chateau 5 years ago. "I remember when we first saw it, we only saw 4 of the 94 rooms. This was because the floors and ceilings in all of the other rooms had fallen in on all of over 5 levels. There were trees growing inside and on the roof," she explained. In hindsight, Mrs. Waters added, "This was probably a good thing because had we seen all of it, we potentially wouldn't have bought it." However, she said she and her husband, Craig Waters, felt ready to take on the challenge, snapping up the property that had been on the market for 4 years for $500,000. Since then, they have renovated bedrooms, bathrooms, staircases and the exterior, pouring their hearts and souls into a project that will no doubt take a lifetime. For our family personally, one of the biggest lessons we've had to learn is that we need to learn to slowly adapt ourselves to the chateau, rather than forcibly demand her to adapt to us, Mrs. Waters explained. "It's been difficult, but we've learned you can't rush a restoration along. We've had to take the time to really understand the chateau's past, and devise the best ideas so that the restoration retains her historical significance." In the same vein, the couple have also had to adapt themselves to the culture in France. "We've had to learn to be respectful of the culture in France and to embrace the simplicity and peace of living here," Mrs. Waters said. "Life does not move fast in rural France, and there is a definite serenity in being disconnected from the rush of the rest of the world." She said that rather than completing the restoration within a specific timeline, it is important to understand that it is the process which matters, not simply finishing within an allocated amount of time. The chateau is never going to be put back together to resemble exactly how she once was. Instead, the importance in her restoration lies in keeping things as authentic as possible and in retaining her integrity. What lessons have the Waters family learned while renovating the chateau? 1. It's all about embracing the old, rather than trying to make everything new. The more that you emphasize the old, the more beautiful it will look. 2. When taking on any renovation project, it's important to take into account how much time you can logistically put into a project. 3. You need to consider seriously your experience and how willingly and able you are to learn about restoration and general handiwork. You will end up having to do some of this yourself. 4. Take into account the cost and be realistic about the amount of money you are able to invest. These can be enormous, and unless you have rigorous training and qualifications, you will not be able to make all changes yourself and will need to factor in the cost. When it comes to progress in recent times, Mrs. Waters said that this year the couple have been predominantly dealing with the Monuments Historiques of France, a government-led organization who have to approve all work carried out in historical buildings. "We've been gathering historical documentation, architectural reports and recording to apply for our next permissions," Mrs. Waters said. "At present, We are looking for permission to reinstall an 18th century building at the back of the chateau which was torn down in the 1960s. The building would be 3 stories and inside we would want to install bathrooms and some smaller single occupancy bedrooms for any staff we might need in the future if it were to open as a hotel. At the moment the chateau only has temporary bathrooms, but we are now at the stage where we require long-term ones. Installing bathrooms in a new building would remove the need for altering any of the rooms inside the chateau, and for removing anything historically significant from the interior. It also removes all the difficulties of installing pipes in Renaissance and medieval stone walls. The building would match the same style and original finish of the chateau, in a way that respects its patina and age. The couple also recently hosted their first wedding at the chateau, the first in over a century. It was such a special occasion, and while we can't offer weddings full-time right now, we plan to put together a wedding package, Mrs. Waters recalled. Speaking about their advice for others who take on a restoration project, whether great or small, Mrs. Waters said it's all about embracing the old, rather than trying to make it new. To me, the beauty of many old things lies in their story, patina and age, she explained. And the more that you emphasize these things, the more beautiful that something old appears to be. It is important to appreciate what something is not, after many years, not just what it used to be. Things don't need to be new to be beautiful. What is old is beautiful, just in a different way to what we are used to seeing. When you trace your hand along a piece of wall in the chateau, you can feel the history within it. She also said that you need to take into account how much time you can logistically put into a project, depending on your situation, whether that be familial, work, financial or otherwise. You may be more or less able to dedicate the amount of time needed. She said, you need to consider seriously your experience and how willingly and able you are to learn about restoration and general handiwork. No doubt you will be doing at least some of the work yourself, even if you don't think so at the beginning. And so, you will need to learn new things as you go and will probably need to be able to do physical work and be dedicated in regards to your time. Lastly, of course, the cost is a huge factor to consider when taking on any renovations. If you are embarking on a project which requires specialist artisans, consider the costings and be realistic about the amount of money you are able to invest, Mrs. Waters said. These can be enormous costs, though rightly so. And if your property does require this sort of restoration work, then this is something that, unless you have rigorous training and qualifications, you will not be able to do yourself and will need to factor in. When it comes to the future, just this week, the chateau, which overlooks the Midi-Pyrenees and was designed by renowned architect Jacques Gabriel, the brains behind the Petit Trianon in Versailles, has opened as a working hotel for visitors throughout the summer months. During the experience, guests stay at the chateau for 3, 5, 7 or 10 nights and enjoy all the wonderful things that France has to offer. The experiences are loosely centered around different things, either restoration, cooking or antiquing, Mrs. Waters said. In the future, we'd love to open as a fully working hotel, however at present we don't have the facilities for this. The Waters have also just released the book, which shows the love story of Château de Gaudens. It tells the tale of the building which was built between 1741 and 1750, and how it progressed throughout the centuries until the Waters family took control and installed heating and electricity for the first time. Buying an almost ruined chateau which was classified as a level 1 historical monument in a country where we didn't even speak the language was always going to be challenging, Mrs. Waters concluded of the experience. But every day counts towards building a dream, and a sustainable future for the chateau.